Hey folks, so a while back I announced I was going to be doing a monthly Q&A series, and so I'm delivering on that for the month of March as I gathered some questions from YouTube content as well as Twitter, and I put them all together in this video. I'll be sure to timestamp each question if you want to focus on a particular one and not worry about other ones. And so without further ado, I'm going to go through these questions that I collected throughout March. Now, if you feel like, man, I really had a question, wish I would have asked it, or maybe you didn't know that I was doing a monthly Q&A, don't worry, you can post your questions in the comments below. I'll be able to get to them in the next video I do at the end of April. Or if it's something really urgent, you can always shoot me a tweet or something like that, and I'll be sure to take a look at it. If I have time, I'll certainly give it an answer as well. But yeah, just, send your questions via Twitter or YouTube content, and they can be on the next video, no problem. Especially if it's one that's going to take me a little bit more to really answer rather than like a simple, quick answer type question. So the first question I got was from Jacob Forrest, and he just asked me what's my favorite color. My favorite color is blue. I guess that is kind of obvious when you look at all the overlays that I use on YouTube and my Twitch stream, or you look at the comforter or the curtains behind me and stuff like that. I kind of even just subconsciously grab stuff that's blue now because it is my favorite color. I don't even think, oh, that's my favorite color, let me get something that's blue. It just sort of happens now. So I think blue is probably going to have to be my favorite color. Then I got another question from Luke Wagner, or maybe it's Luke Wagner, I'm not sure if it's like German or something like that. Anyway, he asks, what is your favorite CSGO pro player and team? Now, I know this is going to sound like a cop-out, but I don't really have a favorite player or team. But I will say that I do have a bias towards more tactical teams and towards in-game leaders. I almost enjoy watching really nifty tactics than I enjoy watching flashy frags or clutch plays. Don't get me wrong, I really love watching really cool frags and really clutch plays, as anyone does. But to me, there's just something special about watching a complex tactic unfold, or watching a really sick read by an in-game leader who makes this just epic mid-round adjustment that wins them the round, or innovations to tactics that come to the game, like new smokes or new ways to throw a common smoke from like a new location on the map to open up other possibilities, or just that the new executes, new smoke walls, new timings, just new stuff that has to do with strategy. I do have a bias towards that sort of thing. So some of my favorite teams to watch are the ones that have been more tactical over time. So like the Brazilian teams back when it was, Luminosity, of course, now what is SK, or even going back to when they were Kaboom, or even the second Brazilian team, Games Academy that became Tempo Storm, that's now a lot of the people who make up Immortals. Like those teams were really coming up with a lot of cool tactical stuff when you saw them playing in the North American scene when they moved over in international competition. So those are teams that obviously I enjoyed watching. I thought Fallen brought a lot of innovation with different executes, and then he learned how to play the slow methodical style. Then he learned how to mix it all together. Obviously, watching Navi back in the day when Zeus was the in-game leader, and his partnership with Starks as a coach, and how they were approaching the game with that slow methodical style, and how they could make cool mid-round adjustments. So that's a team certainly I followed a lot. Existence was someone I really enjoy watching executes that he came up with throughout his time in the French scene. And then I guess in more modern times, I really enjoy like an Astralis and what Glade's been able to do there, like what Kerrigan's doing with FaZe, like what MSL's doing with North, or like what Snappy's doing with Heroic. These more tactical prone teams, even what Stanislaw and Zeus is cooking up over on Liquid, there's some really cool stuff there. Despite that, at the time of me answering this, their roster is still trying to figure out their fifth and things like that. I think you've seen them come up with some really cool executes and some really innovative type stuff. And this goes to coaches as well, not just in-game leaders, innovations that Threats brought to the table within IP, or some of the things that Peacemaker was doing back in his time with Tempo Storm, or obviously guys like Starix, and I'm not purposely leaving any names out. This is just what's coming off the top of my head. I didn't really think too much about these questions, just kind of want the answers to be real natural. And so that's kind of the players and teams that I drift towards when I think of a favorite or something like that. Then I got another question from Luke, the same person who asked a question about the favorite CSGO player and team. What was the first event that I had ever casted or worked at? Now, I'm assuming you mean first LAN event. So my first LAN event was actually working with ESEA TV, and was the Season 12 ESEA LAN. This is way back, I think at the end of 2012, if I'm not mistaken. I think it would have been the end of November, like middle of November of 2012, that LAN event. So that was the first LAN I ever worked at. I was casting with Corey Dunn, who you probably know was commentating for quite some time. He hasn't commentated in a while. He's kind of moved on to other things in life. Still involved in gaming, though. I think he does more like production stuff or directing streams or different things like that, directing broadcasts. Like he directed MLG Columbus, for example, which wasn't that long ago. And he's done some other stuff since then as well, and did a lot of stuff for MLG and Call of Duty and stuff as well. So he was there. Then there was this guy named Cake Builder who used to do a lot of YouTube content for Counter-Strike 1.6, and he did some commentary for USA TV for 1.6. And then actually the other guy was Holden Sylvia, or Nedlow, which he actually wound up moving on to more of a kind of managerial role for ESCA TV, you know, taking care of scheduling and filling staff slots and bringing in new staff as needed. That's whenever, I mean, Holden's the guy who actually was bringing in guys like Van Silly and Sadakist and Moses and Mega Man and these different guys into ESCA TV and, you know, getting more staff. And obviously a lot of those people wound up doing much bigger things later on down the line when you look back in hindsight. So, yeah, but he started out actually commentating. He was commentating with me at Esports Collective. When we got picked up by ESCA TV, he was still doing some commentating. I think Bravo 2 actually did some casting as well. He was kind of the talent manager, head of ESCA TV scheduler before Holden was, and then Holden kind of took over for him after Bravo 2 got really busy. So that was another guy. And I think Laser Jesus did some casting with me at that event as well, because ESCA Season 12 LAN was CS 1.6 and CS Source, but it was also the debut of CSGO. It was the first LAN in North America that had CSGO involved. It was a small event, though. There's only 3 teams involved in the CSGO tournament, and that was the first LAN event I ever went to, and it was a lot of fun. It was a cool experience. That's back when I was doing play-by-play commentary. I mean, I was doing play-by-play from like 2006 or 2008, whenever I started, until about the middle of 2015, before I switched to more color and analyst stuff, which I think I fit a lot better. Probably took way too long to move roles, to be honest. But anyway, that's some of my first casting to answer that question. Chris Drake asked, if you had to pick another esports title to be a part of, whether it be for casting or as an analyst, which title would it be and why? As far as current esports go, there really isn't one that really grabbed my attention the way that Counter-Strike did. I naturally drifted towards Counter-Strike because it really grabbed my attention because of it being a first-person shooter for one. First and foremost, I really love first-person shooters, so I think I would always stick in the FPS genre for the most part. Not that I don't like other games, but I just always have been drawn to FPSs more than any other genre. So I naturally drifted towards CS, and so I don't know that I ever would have naturally drifted towards anything else. You know, I just really love the beauty of Counter-Strike, the fragging, like how cool that can be, the clutching, the strategy, the tactics. When like it looks simple on the surface, when you dig deeper, you get some really complex things strategically. And so that's really where my heart lies, is in something like that. With me liking strategy and tactics, I mean, maybe I could have gotten into a StarCraft 2 or something like that. I definitely watched a lot of StarCraft 2. As I was coming up in Counter-Strike as a commentator. I always was, especially the original Wings of Liberty for StarCraft 2, and then even, I guess, Heart of the Swarm to a degree, but I was really into Wings of Liberty as a viewer and a fan, you know, early on. So that's something maybe I could have drifted towards, I guess, just because I like, you know, strategical stuff, but never anything I really seriously considered. There was never any other games I really seriously considered either. I did some Call of Duty 4 Pro Mod casting, actually, and that was a lot of fun. And I did some casting for a game called Shoot Mania, like a little bit. And that game never really took off, though. So those were some other games that I kind of worked with and thought about, but never really got into. As far as going forward in the future, from this point forward when I publish this video, one game I am looking at would be Battalion 1944. It's a game that kind of has a Call of Duty 4 Pro Mod feel to it, but also has some COD 2 themes because it's like a World War II setting and World War II guns that come from COD 2. So that's a game that I could see myself doing content for on the YouTube channel. In fact, I think I even might have some content already planned out for that game, interviewing the devs that worked on the game and some players involved in testing it. So you may see some YouTube content actually pretty soon from Battalion 1944. And it could be a game that I do some casting for as well, or something like that. I don't think it wouldn't mean that I would be stopping CSGO. It would just be another game I add alongside CSGO, which you see a lot of talent in Counter-Strike working in other games. Like Thorin does content for many different games. You know, Machine did some hosting in Dota 2. Red Eye involved in CSGO, but obviously involved in other games, particularly Dota 2 and StarCraft 2 in recent memory. You know, you have different hosts. You know, Smix just came into CSGO, but she was really doing a lot of StarCraft 2 stuff. So talent typically, expands into other games for the most part. Even Anderson Similar did a little bit of Overwatch for E-League. So yeah, I definitely could see be adding another game alongside CSGO at some point in the future. But it would have to be a game that I'm just naturally drawn to. I would never force myself into another game just to get more work, or force myself into another game just because I just wanted to really cast. It'd have to be a game that I love, because pretty quickly, if it was a game I didn't really enjoy, I would wind up hating it, and you'd be able to tell, right? So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens in the future, but I've never really seriously considered leaving CSGO. I thought about Overwatch for a little bit, but I still never would have left CSGO. So yeah, that kind of answers your question, I hope. Another question from Chris Drake from YouTube. He asked me what got me into gaming in general, and more specifically, what got you and drew you into competitive aspect of gaming. So, I mean, I was into video games as a child from a very young age. I mean, very, very young. I had an NES and then an SNES and a Sega and N64. I mean, I grew up on consoles as a kid, playing games with siblings or other family members or friends around the neighborhood. And so I always was into video games, had a Game Boy, traveled everywhere with it. So I've always been in gaming in general, just as a child, just getting introduced to it by, friends and family, and just really just being drawn to it and killing a lot of hours playing games, basically. As far as what grew me into competitive aspect of gaming was actually Halo 1 on the PC, Halo Combat Evolved. Some friends of mine in high school introduced me to Halo 1 on PC. And so I bought it and played it with them. And then eventually I met other people through playing on servers in Halo. And those people introduced me to this ladder that you could compete on for Halo 1 for PC called Clan Wars. And so I got involved in that. Wasn't a very good player, but basically still enjoyed playing on the ladder, competing in, capture the flag matches or team slayer matches or whatever. And just, being a part of a clan and doing that whole deal. And some people I met in Halo introduced me to Counter-Strike Source. And then that's how I got into Counter-Strike Source very slowly. Started out only playing things like Zombie Mod and Scout's Knives and Gun Game and all that stuff. I don't think I even looked at a Dust 2 deathmatch server until I had already played all those other small mini games for like 6 or so months. And then eventually, after playing D2 death matches, my friends eventually got on an open team, and so then I kind of joined that open team, and then that's how I got involved in competing in things like Cal and CEVO and stuff like that. And then as I was doing that, I saw some broadcasting, like I saw CGS back when that was out, doing Counter-Strike Source stuff. Despite the dark market leads on esports history, that was still one of my first introductions to an esports broadcast. And then I also saw Jimmy Wisenhunt and Corey Dunn doing ESCA lands for Counter-Strike as well. And I thought it was just really neat that not only are people competing in the game for prize money, because when we were competing on the Halo Wars Clan ladder, we were competing for like some fucking JPEG trophy that went next to your account or something. Like, you didn't actually win anything. Maybe some of the, like on Clan Base or something, you might win something. And then there was also like TWL, and I think they gave out like a little trophy or something, like a physical one that they'd send to you or whatever. But yeah, so when I was seeing people compete for prize money in Counter-Strike, I was like, whoa, that's fucking crazy. That's really cool. And then I was like, whoa, people are commentating this, like when I hear commentators on sports on television. And that drew me into commentary. And so that's kind of, in general, how I got involved in gaming and competitive gaming and all that good stuff. So hope that answers your questions, Chris Drake. Next question comes from Josh J, and he wanted me to talk about how some organizers don't pay or pay talent very late. We've heard from some others about this. Can you give some comments? So I'm probably not going to touch on this as transparently as you would like to here, simply because I think Blue put this best in a thread about this. I remember Launders made a tweet, and that got a lot of attention on Reddit, and that's really what kind of stirred the pot most recently about talent getting paid late. But other people have made comments about it before in interviews and stuff like that as well. But that was, I think, the most recent memory I can remember is the Launders tweet and how that blew up on Reddit. And like Blue made a comment inside that thread, basically. And the thing is if we call it in behind the scenes, if you launch your nukes. So if you launch your dirty laundry on somebody, you go nuclear. And so if you do that, then you can get nuked right back, basically. So if you out a tournament organizer for paying you late or not paying you at all, then all of a sudden, if you feel like if you air it out, then, well, now they're definitely not going to pay you because you've thrown them under the bus. So there's that fear at times. So maybe that's a fear that is unreasonable. there's also always like, even if they paid me late, they still did pay me. So if I, complain about them paying me so late, well, maybe they don't want to hire me anymore. And at the end of the day, you still need gigs. So even if someone pays you late, and that's really frustrating and annoying, you still want to get paid and you still want to get gigs. So outing someone who paid you late, means that they probably don't want to work with you. And if you out one person, then other organizers will catch on. They'll be like, well, shit, if I pay this guy a little bit late, he's gonna make a big deal about it publicly. I don't want to deal with that. So you get my point. Like, it's a real gray area you have to play in, because you do have to stand up for yourself, and you do have to, maybe even leverage like, hey, if you don't pay me, eventually I am going to have to report this to someone because this is, unfair. So maybe behind the scenes that could happen. I've never actually done that, but maybe that's like one tactic that can be used, I guess, to try to get people to pay you on time, is to threaten going public. But typically try to keep a lot of this stuff behind closed doors, just because that's just the way that's smart. Especially if you're a smaller name commentator, you don't really have as much pull as maybe a bigger name does to like really force a hand to deal with these issues. So that's something else you have to kind of think about. If you're a smaller fish in the sea, an organizer definitely maybe won't hire you anymore if you cause a bunch of shit about getting paid late. Whereas if it's like a really big name caster and that organizer really needs that guy because they know how much the community loves them and how much pull they have, then all of a sudden the bargaining power is a little bit higher for the caster. That weighs in their favor a bit more, whilst a smaller fish weighs in favor of the tournament organizer more. They're the bigger party, so to speak. You kind of need them, and they kind of need you, but they could always go after someone else if you're causing trouble. Whereas with, the elite tier talent, they really need them, and there really is no replacement for them if they can't get them, so to speak. I mean, yeah, sure there is, but there's going to be an outcry about it. It's not going to be what the fans want. You get my point. So it's a really tricky area. To be honest, I've never had a situation where I just straight up didn't get paid at all when there was an agreement for me to get paid. There's certainly been situations where I knew up front I wasn't going to get paid. I was just kind of volunteering, doing it for fun. And so, then, yeah, I didn't get paid. But again, there was no expectation I would get paid. And there's never been a situation where someone agreed to pay me and then they just never paid me. That's never happened. Certainly there's been situations where I've gotten paid late. Usually it's not very late, maybe only a couple of weeks late or something like that. There has been a couple of instances where I got paid really late and it was really frustrating. And this isn't just small events. Even big companies have done this. And again, I'm probably not the only one. You heard Launders talking about it publicly. Other casters have spoken up, so the same things happen to them at times. So yes, it certainly is a reality, and it's very frustrating. And especially when this is your primary source of income, it can be a real hassle because you got bills to pay. And so you need that check to come on time so you can take care of your financial responsibilities. That'd be just like any other job in life. If you weren't getting paid on time and you had bills to pay and you expect that paycheck to come because you've agreed to terms to get paid, it can be a big deal. Hopefully in the future this can get resolved more. I think it's about how you structure your contract with a tournament organizer, because not only do you need to structure, hey, you have X amount of days to pay me after I submit my invoice, but they're also, maybe try to set up a penalty like, hey, if you pay me X amount of days late, then you have to add an extra percentage onto my pay or something. The only other problem really is like, even if they still pay you late, if they, just continue to pay you late, or they refuse to accept the penalty that they pay you late, I mean, how are you really going to enforce it? I mean, are you really going to take them to court? I mean, it's a real tricky situation. So yeah, it's definitely something that happens. I would say it's happened to me very little. I've been fortunate. And again, I've never not been paid. So I've been kind of fortunate in that regard. So it's not an issue I've dealt with that much. Yeah, there's been some late payments, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, it certainly is kind of a tricky, complex kind of situation in that regard. But I just want to touch on it a little bit at least. Next question comes from a man by the name of Display on Twitter, and he asked, what holds you back from being a top-tier analyst, even though guys like Thorin have said that you are not so bad on the desk? So first of all, I'd like to say that I obviously appreciate receiving respect from my peers. That's like one of the most important things to me. I mean, sure, it's nice to be loved by the community and all that good stuff, but it's a whole nother level to get respect from your peers and people you work with. And so that was kind of a big landmark for me at the middle of last year, to kind of start earning some respect from the talent pool that saw that I was doing good work, especially since it was something I put a lot of time into. I mean, again, I haven't been doing color commentary and analysis that long. Like, I made a major role shift as a broadcaster in the middle of 2015 or end of 2015. And so I've only been color casting for a year and a half, and I've only done analyst desk work for less than a year, because my first analyst desk gig wasn't until like one segment in April of 2016 at the CSGO Gfinity Season 9 Pro League Finals, which is where this comment comes from, because Thorin made this like public tweet, and so did Richard and Chris Puckett, some other people, about how well I did as a caster and analyst at that event, particularly how well me and Metis casted together, which leads to things going on now in the current day in recent past. And so, yeah, it's great to receive that, because, again, put a lot of time into it. You know, a lot of hours grinding, watching demos and collecting stats, and, you know, putting notes together and finding ways to portray that data to the public in a way that's consumable and concise and entertaining and things like that. So, yeah, again, it's great to receive respect for something that you invest a lot of time into. As far as what holds me back from being a top-tier analyst, I think first and foremost, I have to say that if it's hard to know. If I knew all of the answers to that question, maybe I would be in a different position than I am in now. So I think that it's my own ignorance that is a part of it, just maybe not knowing what moves I need to make or what things I need to change or different things like that. It's a very tricky situation, especially in an area that can be very subjective at times. Yeah, sure, objectively you have to know your stuff, and people can tell very easily if you're talking out your ass and you're not knowledgeable, or you're really shit at presenting the information. You know, but there's a lot of subjectivity that comes into it as well. And so, yeah, it becomes difficult to really sift through all of that. I think one problem is I switched too late to color casting and analysis. I'm kind of combining analysis and color casting together here. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I'm kind of doing both right now. So I figured I'd kind of lump those two things together. I think I just switched too late. You know, I think I should have gotten to color casting and analysis much earlier on, if not from the beginning, at least when it comes to CSGO. So I think that certainly hurt. I think if I could have established myself much earlier on as an analyst and a color caster, when there weren't that many color casters and analysts around, maybe I could have done a little bit better. But who really knows? You know, it kind of doesn't make sense to harp on the past too much. Another big thing many people have talked about, actually, is there's a lot of established talent in CSGO. There's a lot of talented people in CSGO. You know, you have the 3 elite duos, you have all the elite analysts, and then even below that, you have a lot of talented people that aren't in the 3 big duos that are still really good commentators, or you have a lot of really good analysts out there outside the elite ones you may think of that they're still really good. And then you constantly have new people coming in, like especially when pros retire or take a break from playing and they want to get into color casting and analysis, and that even loads up the pool of talent even more. And so when you think about that, when there's a lot more established talent out there at the top of the totem pole that are fan favorites and have worked very hard to get where they are, and we just have a lot of talent in the scene in general, then yeah, it obviously becomes hard to get work and move up the ladder when there is so many, you know, talent to choose from, many of which are, in my case, more established, have bigger followings, you know, in general, maybe even more talented, or, you know, do as good as work as I could do, or even better, and they have a bigger following. There's just more reasons to hire that person than me. So at least for now, unless I can, you know, grow, which I'm trying to do. So that's part of it. I think also one of the biggest things to mention here that holds me back is I'm not a former professional player. And if you're a color caster or an analyst and you're not a former professional player, then I think that just makes people perceive you in a way that is lower to how they would perceive a person in that role that was a former pro. So I think that's something that is really important to think about as well. Even if I say something that's really good and it's accurate, it still doesn't sound as good as if a pro said it. There's been plenty of times where I've heard former pros or pros say things that I have said, but they got received better just because they have that authority as being a former professional player. So I think that really comes into it. Like, even if I spit out some really top quality analysis, if a pro player says the same thing, they're going to get more credit than I do because they're the former pro. And so I think that certainly has to hurt to some degree. Doesn't completely stop me from doing things, because there are some color casters and analysts who have still done really well that weren't necessarily former pros. like Thorin, for example, though he has like a really huge brand and he has like a character to him that's very unique compared to the rest of the talent pool. So that's one thing to think about. Someone like DDK does a lot of color in CSGO, but he was never a pro CS player, but he was a former pro in Quake. So again, it's not as if it means you're definitely not going to make it, but I think to some degree it affects public perception and can kind of hold you back a little bit. Also, I think that for me, while I can bring a lot of knowledge to the table because of just the amount of hours I spend doing research and putting data together, it's still, you have to bring some type of entertainment value or some type of unique character to a broadcast. And I think that's something I still lack in. I'm still trying to figure out. You know, I kind of been testing the boundaries of what I could do as far as, you know, telling jokes. Telling really edgy jokes definitely isn't my thing. I've learned that. But maybe trying to find a way to still add humor in a better way, or just finding ways to kind of stand out and be unique in my own way compared to other analysts, I think is really important. I'm still trying to figure that out. Again, I've only been doing an analyst desk work for less than a year, so I'm still trying to figure that out. And I'm still doing color casting as well, though, so you have that as well. And then there's just other subjective things, like whether people like my voice or not, whether people like my look or not, and just other things that are maybe out of my control or things I still need to work on. And so that certainly are all things that may factor into your question. So yeah, again, hard to know all the answers, but maybe those are some things that are involved. A lot of it is in my control. I just have to work harder. I have to grind more. I have to improve in certain areas and just keep rolling and see what happens. But some things are a little bit out of my control, I guess. So the last question is from Aden Eels, and he asks, what are your current goals? And so in the world of CSGO and esports particular, or esports and CSGO in particular, first and foremost, my goal is to get more events, just get more consistent work, try to get some stability in my life as a broadcaster and be able to make somewhat of a living out of doing this, like, you know, making enough money to make ends meet and just, you know, getting myself out there more, getting more established, building some momentum and some consistency in me being a broadcaster. That is first and foremost what I have to do. First goal, just to get to more events. Maybe get a gig working for one of the leagues. That way I have like something that I know that I'm going to be doing regularly for a couple of months, you know, get to more lands, obviously. So that's it. And the way that I'm going to do that, hopefully, if I had to get to pick how I would do it, my first option, like the thing I really want, would be to form some type of duo with Metis in particular. Me and him worked together at DreamHack Leipzig very recently. You know, me and him may hopefully be working together for some more stuff in the near future. Have to see. We obviously worked together last year as well at a couple of events with Gfinity, and we did some online stuff as well for like II Power tournaments and CVO Pro League and things like that last year as well. We're very good friends. We work really well together. We get along very well. We enjoy working with each other. We definitely play our defined roles. Like, he's definitely play-by-play. I'm definitely color. So there's no real, you know, mix-up there, I think. I get to focus on my strengths and he gets to focus on his. So I think that could work. And so hopefully that's an option. If that doesn't work, then I would just hopefully be able to focus back on getting back on the analyst desk. You have to understand that I have to be flexible to get work, right? When an event organizer comes to me, they usually already know what role they want me to play. So they're like, hey, would you like to come to this event to cast? Hey, would you like to come to this event to be on the desk? Just so happens that in most recent times, it's been to cast. And I've been happy about that because with Leipzig, at least, it was to get the cast with Metis, which is what I really wanted to do. So I have to kind of take what I can get, so to speak. You know, I can't turn down a gig because for the role that I don't want. Like, I'd be stupid if an event came to me and said, hey, would you like to come cast this event? And I'd say, actually, no, if I can't be on the analyst desk, I just don't want to come to the event at all. You know what I mean? It's just not something that makes really any sense. So it kind of just depends on what I get hired for, really. Like I said, right now, personally, I would really like to just keep getting hired with Metis as a duo. But if I can't cast with him, then maybe the analyst desk would probably be my preference. I enjoy both roles quite a lot. I think it's just depending on what role you're in, depends on what you focus on. Like, I still have to build a big knowledge base and be able to know what I'm talking about. But if I'm an analyst, I'm maybe going to focus more on, you know, teams' recent results, their recent form, players' recent form, some historical context, map pool, you know, just identifying the teams and players. Whereas if I'm a caster, I'm probably going to get to focus more on tactics and strategy and just what's going on at the micro level of the game rather than the overarching macro storylines that are going on. And I personally, my favorite thing is tactics and strategy. Like, that's what I study the most whenever I'm doing my research. I much rather watch demos and learn how a team's playing and what stuff they're bringing to the table tactically than crunching numbers and putting stats together in that regard. So because of that, maybe color casting is a bit better because I gets to focus more on tactics. But as an analyst, I still can talk about strategy on the desk, and I still like talking about the storylines as well. So yeah, again, I have to kind of be flexible and just kind of see what happens there. But yeah, first and foremost is just to get more consistent work. After that, my next goal would just be to get to elite level events like a DreamHack Masters and IEM ESL1 type events. I've never been to one of those kinds of events. I've never been to a 250k plus event. So that would be the next goal, would to be to do a lot of consistent work at decent lands, but not the elite ones, the best of the best, so to speak, and then get to eventually one of those elite level lands. And then once I get to one of them, then try to get to more of them, right? Like, it's take those steps. And then obviously the ultimate goal in CSGO is to one day get to a major in some capacity, but there's a lot of things I need to hit first before I get there. Then other goals are maybe perhaps expand to another game alongside CSGO. It's something I talked about earlier about Battalion, or just maybe there's some other game out there that I don't even know about yet that maybe will pique my interest. And then another goal, maybe if I can't make broadcasting work, to just find a job more behind the scenes, more out of the limelight, so to speak, and still just try to work in the industry. Find some type of career that's stable, that I can make a living from, but that's still related to the esports industry or related to the live streaming industry, video game industry, or just something involved in this industry or something very closely related, because that's where my real passions lie. And so maybe a combination of both. Maybe I get a full-time job more behind the scenes, and then I cast on the side or something. Some people have done that. Maybe that's an option. That would maybe be the perfect scenario to make sure that I have like a stable income and be able to do things that I love. So that's another goal. And then I have health goals, just losing weight, getting in better shape, working on that now. I've certainly lost a good bit of weight over the last 6 months or so, but I still have a good ways to go. I'm maybe only about halfway to my goal from where I started. Not even, maybe like 40% to my goal from where I started. So I still have a lot to go. So that's like some other goals I have that's outside of gaming and stuff like that. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video, for this Q&A. Again, if you have questions that you'd like to ask in a future video, just put them in the comments below or tweet them at me, and they'll get in the April Q&A. So yeah, thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope this gave you some insight into some things that you're interested in. And if you did get something out of this, be sure to follow and subscribe for more content. Thanks so much. Have a good one, and see you next time.